3 weeks after my son was buried. My phone lit up at exactly 3 a.m. The message said, "Mom, I'm not dead. And you're not safe." And the number was still saved under my son's name. But the person sleeping down the hall was his wife. 3 weeks after Liam's funeral, the house had learned how to be quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet Eleanor Brooks used to enjoy in the early mornings, when sunlight slipped through the curtains and her husband hummed softly in the kitchen. This was a different silence, heavy, watchful, the kind that settled into the walls and stayed there listening. At 69, Eleanor had lived long enough to recognize grief. But this wasn't just grief. It was absence. Liam's shoes still sat by the front door, one slightly tilted as if he had kicked them off in a hurry. His jacket still hung on the wooden rack, the sleeve brushing lightly against the wall whenever the air shifted. Eleanor had not moved a single thing. She couldn't. Some people said you had to let go. Eleanor didn't believe that. She moved slowly through the house that evening, her fingers trailing along familiar surfaces, the edge of the dining table, the back of the sofa, the cool marble countertop in the kitchen. Every corner held a memory. Every object felt like proof that he had once been there, that he had existed. In the living room, a framed photograph caught her eye. Liam stood between her and Sophie, smiling in that easy, effortless way he had. One arm around his mother, the other around his wife. It had been taken just last year at a small family dinner. Nothing special. Just an ordinary night. Eleanor stared at Sophie's face in the photo. Even then, something about her smile felt too perfect. "Mrs. Brooks." The voice came softly from behind her. Eleanor turned. Sophie stood in the doorway, dressed in a simple cream sweater. Her hair pulled neatly over one shoulder. She always looked composed. Even now. Even after losing her husband. "I made some tea," Sophie said gently. "Chamomile. It might help you sleep." Sleep. Eleanor almost smiled at the word. "I'm not tired," she replied. Sophie stepped closer anyway, setting the cup down on the table with careful precision. "You haven't been sleeping well," she said. "I can hear you walking at night." Eleanor's eyes flickered slightly. "You listen closely," she said. Sophie paused, just for a fraction of a second, before offering a soft, reassuring smile. "I worry about you." "Of course you do." Eleanor nodded faintly, but something cold moved through her chest. Sophie had moved into the house just days after the funeral. Said it didn't feel right for Eleanor to be alone. Said Liam would have wanted someone to take care of her. It had sounded reasonable. Even. And Sophie had been helpful. She handled the paperwork, the calls, the insurance documents. Things Eleanor didn't have the strength to deal with. She cooked, cleaned, organized. She moved through the house as if she had always belonged there. Too easily. "Did you speak to the insurance company?" Sophie asked. "Yes," Eleanor said quietly. "They said they're still reviewing the report." Sophie nodded. "These things take time." Time. Everything seemed to take time now. Except the silence. That had come immediately. Eleanor glanced toward the hallway, toward the closed door of Liam's old room. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked suddenly. Sophie's expression didn't change. "Of course," she said. "Do you remember where you were?" A small pause. Then calmly. "At home. I told the police that already." Eleanor held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "Yes," she said. "You did." Sophie tilted her head slightly. "Why are you asking?" Eleanor looked away. No reason. But there was a reason. She just didn't have the shape of it yet. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows, a low, restless sound. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. Eleanor reached for the tea, but didn't drink it. And as Sophie quietly turned and walked back down the hallway, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was not alone in her grief. There was something else in this house. Something waiting. Watching. And she had the unsettling sense that Sophie knew exactly what it was. The next morning, Eleanor woke before the sun. She hadn't meant to. Sleep had come in fragments, thin, restless pieces that never quite settled. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the same quiet pressure in her chest, as if something unfinished was waiting just beyond her reach. She sat up slowly, the room still dim and colorless in the early dawn. For a moment, she listened. Silence. Then soft footsteps in the hallway. Eleanor's gaze shifted toward the door. Sophie. Always awake early. Always moving. Eleanor rose from the bed, wrapping her robe tightly around her shoulders, and stepped into the hallway. The scent of coffee drifted faintly through the house, warm and familiar, but something about it felt staged. Too perfect. In the kitchen, Sophie stood by the counter, already dressed, already composed. A mug rested in her hand, steam curling upward in delicate spirals. "You're up early," Sophie said, turning with a small smile. "So are you," Eleanor replied. Sophie's smile didn't falter. "I've always been a light sleeper." Eleanor watched her for a moment. There was something unsettling about how quickly Sophie filled the space. The way she moved through the kitchen, opening cabinets, reaching for things, like she had memorized every inch of the house. Like it was hers. "I made breakfast," Sophie added, gesturing toward the table. "Toast. Eggs. Fresh fruit. Everything neatly arranged." Eleanor stepped closer, her eyes scanning the table. "You didn't have to," she said. "I know," Sophie replied softly. "But it helps to keep things normal." Normal. The word lingered in the air. Eleanor sat down slowly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the plate. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sophie pulled out a chair across from her and sat. "There are a few calls we should make today," she said gently. "The bank. And Liam's office. They've been asking about his accounts." Eleanor stiffened slightly. "I can handle that," she said. Sophie nodded, but there was something in her expression, something measured. "Of course," she said. "I just thought I could help." "Help." Eleanor picked up her fork but didn't eat. "I noticed you moved some of his things," she said quietly. Sophie paused. "Only a few," she replied. "Just to make space." "For what?" The question came out sharper than Eleanor intended. Sophie's eyes lifted to meet hers. "For you," she said calmly. "So you don't have to be reminded every moment." Eleanor's grip tightened around the fork. "I want to be reminded." A brief silence stretched between them. Sophie leaned back slightly, studying her. "Grief can be overwhelming," she said. "Sometimes it's better to let go of certain things." Eleanor's gaze hardened. "Or certain people?" she asked. For the first time, Sophie didn't answer immediately. Just a flicker. Barely noticeable. But it was there. Then, just as quickly, her expression softened again. "I would never suggest that," she said. Eleanor held her eyes for a long moment. Then, without another word, she set the fork down. "I'm not hungry." She stood and walked toward the sink, her movements slow but deliberate. Behind her, she could feel Sophie watching. Not with concern. Not with warmth. But with something else. Something quieter. Something calculating. As Eleanor rinsed her hands under the cold water, her gaze drifted toward the reflection in the kitchen window. For a brief second, she saw both of them standing there, herself, worn and grieving, and Sophie, still composed, unreadable. And suddenly, a thought slipped into her mind, uninvited and impossible to ignore. Sophie wasn't just helping. She was settling in, taking control. And Eleanor had the uneasy feeling that she was slowly being pushed out of her own life. At exactly 3 a.m., Eleanor's phone lit up. The sound was soft, just a single vibration against the wooden nightstand. But in the silence of the room, it felt loud enough to pull her straight out of sleep. Her eyes opened slowly. For a moment, she didn't move. The darkness pressed in around her, thick and unfamiliar. The digital clock beside her bed glowed faintly red. 3:00 a.m. Another vibration. Eleanor turned her head. The phone screen pulsed with light. A message. She frowned. No one texted her at this hour. For a few seconds, she simply stared at it, her mind still heavy with sleep. Then slowly, she reached out and picked up the phone. The screen unlocked with a soft tap. One unread message. From a contact she hadn't seen light up in 3 weeks. Her breath caught. Liam. Her fingers froze above the screen. That wasn't possible. She swallowed, her throat suddenly dry, and opened the message. For a moment, the words didn't make sense. They seemed to float on the screen, disconnected from reality. Then they settled. Clear. Sharp. Unmistakable. Mom, don't trust her. Eleanor stopped breathing. The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if something deep beneath her had shifted out of place. Her eyes flicked back to the name. Liam. Her son. Her dead son. No, she whispered. Her hands began to tremble. This had to be wrong. A mistake. Some kind of glitch. She stared at the number. It was his. The same number she had called 100 times before. The same one she had saved years ago, with a small heart next to his name. Her chest tightened. She tapped the contact, as if expecting it to change. It didn't. The message remained. Cold. Still. Waiting. Eleanor sat up slowly, the blanket falling away from her legs. Her heart was beating too fast now. Each pulse sharp and uneven. Think. There had to be an explanation. Someone else could be using the number. Phones get reassigned. Yes. That was it. It had to be. But then, why that message? Why those words? Her gaze drifted toward the bedroom door. Closed. Beyond it, the hallway stretched toward the guest room. Toward Sophie. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the phone. Don't trust her. A chill ran through her. She shook her head quickly. No. This was grief. This was her mind trying to fill the silence. Trying to make sense of something that couldn't be understood. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood. Her movements slow, unsteady. The floor was cold beneath her feet. She stepped toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to look out. The street was empty. Still. Dark. Nothing moved. For a moment she stood there, listening to her own breathing. Then, another vibration. Eleanor flinched. Her eyes snapped back to the phone. Another message. Her thumb hovered above the screen. For a second, she didn't want to open it. But she did. The message appeared instantly. I mean it, Mom. Eleanor's knees weakened slightly, and she reached for the edge of the dresser to steady herself. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirror. Pale, wide-eyed, unfamiliar. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone was sending these messages. Someone who knew exactly what to say. And exactly who to say it to. Her mind raced. Only a few people still had Liam's number saved. Only a few people would even think to use it. Slowly, almost against her will, Eleanor turned her head toward the door. Toward the hallway. Toward Sophie's room. The silence of the house returned, but now it felt different. Heavier. Closer. And for the first time since the funeral, Eleanor felt something stronger than grief. Not sadness. Not confusion. But fear. Because somewhere inside her, a quiet voice had begun to whisper. What if the message was telling the truth? Eleanor didn't sleep again that night. She sat on the edge of her bed until dawn. The phone still clutched in her hand. The screen long gone dark. Every few minutes, she would unlock it, reread the messages, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less impossible. They never did. Mom, don't trust her. I mean it, Mom. The tone was unmistakable. It sounded like Liam. Not just the words, but the way he said things. Direct. Urgent. Like when he was a teenager trying to convince her of something he knew she wouldn't believe at first. Eleanor pressed her lips together. No. She couldn't allow herself to think like that. There had to be a logical explanation. There always was. By the time the first light of morning crept through the curtains, she had already made a decision. She would not mention the messages. Not yet. She needed to understand what was happening before she said anything, before she gave anyone the chance to explain it away. Or worse, hide it. In the kitchen, Sophie was already awake. Of course she was. She stood by the stove, stirring something slowly, the soft clink of the spoon against the pan echoing faintly through the room. Everything about her looked exactly the same as yesterday. Calm. Composed. Untouched. Good morning, Sophie said gently, glancing over her shoulder. You're up early again. Eleanor stepped into the room, watching her carefully. I didn't sleep much, she replied. Sophie frowned slightly, turning off the stove. I was afraid of that, she said. You've been restless lately. Eleanor didn't answer. She moved closer to the table, setting her phone down beside her hand, but not letting go of it completely. Did you hear anything last night? She asked casually. Sophie tilted her head. Hear what? I don't know, Eleanor said, shrugging lightly. A noise. Maybe a phone. Sophie shook her head without hesitation. No, she said. I slept through the night. Too quick. Too smooth. Eleanor's fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table. I thought I heard something, she murmured. Sophie stepped closer, her expression softening. You're probably just overtired, she said. It's normal. After everything. Her voice trailed off gently, as if grief explained everything. As if it explained too much. Eleanor picked up her phone slowly. There's something strange, she said. Sophie's eyes flicked, just briefly, to the phone. What is it? She asked. Eleanor turned the screen toward herself, hesitating for a fraction of a second. Then she locked it again. Nothing, she said. Sophie watched her. A quiet pause settled between them. Are you sure? Sophie asked softly. Eleanor met her gaze. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Sophie smiled again. That same careful, reassuring smile. All right, she said. But if something's bothering you, you can tell me. Of course I can, Eleanor thought. But I won't. Not yet. Later that morning, when Sophie stepped out to take a call in the backyard, Eleanor moved. Quickly. Silently. She picked up Sophie's phone from the kitchen counter. For a second, her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might give her away. Then she turned the screen on. Locked. Of course. Eleanor swallowed. She didn't know what she expected. Messages, call logs, something obvious. Something that would make sense of the impossible. But there was nothing. Just a blank screen staring back at her. She set the phone down exactly where it had been. Every detail mattered now. Every movement. Every word. When Sophie came back inside, she didn't say anything. But her eyes lingered on Eleanor for just a moment too long. As if she knew. As if she had noticed something. Or perhaps, as if she had been waiting for Eleanor to make the first move. That afternoon, Eleanor sat alone in the living room, the house quiet again. Her phone rested in her lap. She stared at it. Waiting. Dreading. At exactly 3 a.m., it had come alive. So what would happen tonight? Another message? Another warning? Or something worse? Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen. And for the first time, a new thought began to form, slowly, dangerously. Maybe the question wasn't who was sending the messages. Maybe the real question was why Sophie wasn't surprised at all. That night, Eleanor didn't turn off the lights. She sat upright in bed, her back against the headboard, the room dim but not dark. A lamp glowed softly on the nightstand, casting long shadows across the walls. Her phone rested in her lap, screen facing up. She kept checking the time. 2:17 a.m. 2:36 a.m. 2:51 a.m. Each minute stretched longer than it should have. Her eyes burned, but she didn't dare close them. Not tonight. Not at 3 o'clock. The house was silent again, but now she noticed things she hadn't before. The faint hum of electricity in the walls. The occasional creak of wood settling. The distant rustle of wind outside. And beneath it all, something else. A feeling. Like the house was holding its breath. 2:59. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the phone. Then. 3:00 am. The screen lit up instantly. A sharp vibration broke the silence. Eleanor flinched, her heart slamming against her ribs. For a second she didn't move. Then slowly she looked down. One new message. From Liam. Her throat went dry. She opened it. She was there that night. Eleanor stared at the words. Her mind went blank. Then suddenly memories rushed back. That night. The accident. Sophie standing in the doorway, pale but composed, telling her the news. Saying Liam had been alone. That it happened too fast. That no one could have done anything. I wasn't there, Sophie had said. I got the call just like you. Eleanor's breath grew shallow. Her eyes flicked toward the door. Closed. Beyond it. Sophie's room. She was there that night. The message pulsed in her mind. Why would Liam say that? Unless. Another vibration. Eleanor gasped softly. A second message. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Don't let her know you're reading this. A cold wave spread through her chest. Her grip on the phone tightened. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. Whoever was sending these messages knew exactly what was happening. Knew where she was. Knew who was in the house. Knew Sophie. Eleanor swung her legs off the bed. Standing slowly. The floor felt colder than before. She stepped toward the door, each movement careful, silent. Her hand hovered over the handle. Don't let her know. Eleanor hesitated. Then she pulled her hand back. No. Not yet. She turned instead and moved toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just slightly. The street outside was empty. Still. No cars. No movement. Nothing that explained this. Behind her, the phone buzzed again. Eleanor turned sharply. Another message. Her pulse raced as she grabbed it. Check the time she went out. Eleanor frowned. Went out? Sophie had said she was home that night. All night. Eleanor's mind began to piece things together. Fragments, inconsistencies, small details she had ignored before. The way Sophie had answered questions. Too clean. Too certain. The lack of emotion. The precision. Slowly, Eleanor lowered herself onto the edge of the bed. Her thoughts were no longer scattered. They were aligning. Forming something sharper. Something dangerous. If Sophie had lied. If she had been there. Then what really happened that night? Eleanor stared at the glowing screen, her reflection faintly visible across it. For the first time, the fear inside her began to change. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was suspicion. And something else. Something colder. Because now the messages weren't just unsettling. They were guiding her. Leading her somewhere. Toward a truth she wasn't ready to face. And as the room fell silent again, one thought echoed clearly in her mind. If Liam was telling the truth, then the woman sleeping down the hall was lying. Asterisk asterisk. The next morning, Eleanor didn't wait. She had already decided sometime between 3 o'clock and 4 a.m., between the messages, between the silence, that she would stop sitting still. If someone was guiding her, then she would follow. But carefully. Very carefully. Sophie was in the kitchen again. Of course. Coffee already made. Breakfast already prepared. Everything in its place. As if the house itself moved according to her rhythm. You're up early, Sophie said, glancing over with that same soft smile. Eleanor studied her. There was nothing visibly different. No sign of guilt. No sign of fear. Just calm. Too calm. I couldn't sleep, Eleanor replied. Sophie nodded sympathetically. You should try to rest more. Your body needs it. Eleanor didn't answer. Instead, she poured herself coffee and sat down, her movements slow, deliberate. I was thinking about the night Liam died, she said. Sophie's hand paused for the smallest fraction of a second before continuing. Yes, she said quietly. I think about it too. Eleanor took a sip of coffee, watching her over the rim of the cup. You said you were home, Eleanor continued. I was, Sophie replied. Did you go out at all? Sophie looked at her now. Directly. No, she said. No hesitación. No confusión. Just certainty. Eleanor nodded slowly, as if accepting it. But inside something tightened. Later that morning, Sophie left the house. I need to pick up a few things, she said. I won't be long. Eleanor watched her go. Waited. Listened as the front door closed. As the car engine started. As the sound faded down the street. Then. Silence. Eleanor moved immediately. No hesitation this time. She went straight to the hallway closet where Sophie kept her things, bags, shoes, small personal items. Nothing unusual at first. Everything neat. Organized. Controlled. Eleanor opened one of the drawers. Scarves. Gloves. Another drawer. Documents. She paused. Carefully she pulled them out. Insurance papers. Bank statements. Then, a folded receipt. Eleanor frowned and unfolded it. A gas station. Timestamp. 11:47 p.m. The same night Liam died. Her pulse quickened. That was late. Too late. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the paper. Sophie had said she was home. All night. But this said otherwise. A sound outside made her freeze. A car passing. Not stopping. Eleanor exhaled slowly, then kept going. She moved into the living room, her eyes scanning the space. The message echoed in her mind. Check the time she went out. Time. Proof. There had to be more. Her gaze shifted toward the corner of the room. The security panel. Old, but still functional. Liam had installed it years ago. Cameras at the front door. The driveway. The garage. Eleanor stepped closer, her heart beating faster. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed the buttons. The screen flickered. Loaded. Dates appeared. She scrolled. Back. Further. Until the night of the accident. Her breath caught. She selected the footage. The screen filled with grainy black and white images. Timestamp blinking in the corner. 11:32 p.m. The driveway was empty. Still. Then. Headlights. A car pulling out. Eleanor leaned closer. The angle was partially blocked, but she knew that car. Sophie's car. Her stomach dropped. The timestamp changed. 11:33 p.m. The car disappeared into the darkness. Eleanor stared at the screen, unable to move. Her mind raced. Sophie had left. Late at night. Without saying anything. On the same night Liam died. Her hands slowly lowered to her sides. The room felt colder now. Smaller. Different. Because the question was no longer if Sophie had lied. That part was clear. The real question was, why? And somewhere deep inside, Eleanor felt the answer waiting. Dark. Heavy. And getting closer with every second. Eleanor didn't stop there. She couldn't. The footage still played in her mind. The headlights, the timestamp, the quiet certainty of Sophie's car leaving the house at 11:33 p.m. That single detail had shifted everything. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. She stood in the living room for a long moment, listening. The house remained silent. Too silent. Then she moved again. This time, toward Sophie's room. Eleanor paused at the door, her hand hovering just above the handle. A strange hesitation crept in. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. Crossing this line would change things. There would be no going back. She turned the handle. The door opened without a sound. Sophie's room was immaculate. The bed perfectly made. The curtains drawn just enough to let in soft daylight. Every object placed with intention. Nothing out of line, nothing out of place. It didn't feel lived in. It felt arranged. Eleanor stepped inside slowly, her eyes scanning every corner. Closet. Desk. Nightstand. Everything neat. Too neat. She moved toward the dresser first, opening the top drawer. Clothes. Folded precisely. Second drawer. More of the same. Third. Her fingers paused. At the very back, partially hidden beneath a stack of sweaters, something dark caught her eye. A phone. Not Sophie's usual one. This one was older. Smaller. A burner phone. Eleanor's pulse spiked. Slowly she picked it up. The screen was black. She pressed the power button. For a second nothing happened. Then, the screen flickered to life. No pascode. No look. Just a simple home screen. Eleanor's breath grew shallow. She opened the messages. And froze. Dozens of messages. All sent. All from one number. Liam's number. Her vision blurred slightly as she scrolled. Each message time-stamped. Each one precise. Each one after his death. Mom, don't trust her. I mean it, Mom. She was there that night. Eleanor's hands began to shake. These were the messages. The exact ones she had received. Her heart pounded louder with every second. So Sophie was behind it. She had to be. This phone. This was proof. But then, Eleanor noticed something. She leaned closer. The timestamps. Not sent in real time. Scheduled. Programmed in advance. Her breath caught. No. That didn't make sense. Why would Sophie schedule messages pretending to be Liam? Before Eleanor even reacted. Unless. A cold realization began to form. Slow. Unwelcome. Another folder. Eleanor tapped it. Audio files. Her fingers hesitated. Then she pressed play. A voice crackled through the speaker. Distorted. Broken. But familiar. Mom, if you're hearing this. Eleanor's knees weakened. She grabbed the edge of the dresser to steady herself. It was Liam. Or something very close to him. Edited. Fragmented. But unmistakable. The recording cut off abruptly. Eleanor stood frozen, the phone still in her hand. Her thoughts spiraled. If Sophie had created this, why schedule it? Why leave it where it could be found? Why not hide it better? A faint sound echoed from outside. A car door. Eleanor's head snapped toward the window. Her heart jumped. Sophie. She was back. Panic surged through her. Eleanor quickly placed the burner phone back exactly where she found it, covering it with the sweaters. Every detail had to match. Every position. Every angle. She stepped back, forcing herself to breathe. Normal. Nothing happened. Footsteps approached the house. The front door opened. Closed. Silence. Then, Sophie's voice. Soft. Calling out from the hallway. Eleanor. Eleanor turned toward the door of the bedroom, her pulse still racing. For a brief second, her reflection in the mirror caught her eye. Pale. Wide-eyed. Different. Because now she knew something she couldn't unknow. This wasn't just manipulation. This wasn't just lies. This was something far more deliberate. Far more planned. And as Sophie's footsteps grew closer, one terrifying thought settled into Eleanor's mind. If Sophie didn't send those messages, then who did? ***. The rest of the day passed too quietly. Sophie acted exactly the same. She made lunch. She asked gentle questions. She moved through the house with that same calm precision, as if nothing had shifted beneath the surface. But everything had. Eleanor felt it in the way she watched her now, in the way every word Sophie spoke seemed measured, calculated, waiting. That night, Eleanor didn't sit on the bed. She sat in the chair by the window, the lamp turned off, the room wrapped in darkness. Only the faint glow from the street outside painted thin lines across the floor. Her phone rested in her hand. She didn't check the time anymore. She felt it. The waiting. The pull. When the screen finally lit up, she didn't flinch this time. She was ready. 3:00 a.m. One message. She opened it immediately. She found the phone, didn't she? Eleanor's breath caught. Her grip tightened. The room suddenly felt smaller. Colder. How would anyone know that? Her eyes darted toward the door. Closed. Silent. Sophie's room down the hall. Still. Another vibration. Second message. Don't react. She's watching you. Eleanor's chest rose sharply, then forced itself still. Slow. Careful. She turned her head slightly, just enough to glance toward the mirror across the room. Nothing. Just her reflection. But the message lingered. She's watching you. From where? A third vibration. Eleanor swallowed before opening it. Listen carefully. A file appeared below the text. Audio. Her thumb hovered for a moment. Then pressed play. Static. Low. Crackling. Then. A voice. Faint at first. Distorted. But unmistakable. Mom. Eleanor's eyes filled instantly. Her heart twisted. Liam, she whispered, barely audible. The recording continued. Broken. Cut in places. But clear enough. If you're hearing this, something went wrong. Eleanor leaned forward, as if she could pull the voice closer. I didn't plan for this. A sharp crack interrupted the audio. Then. She followed me. Eleanor froze. Her entire body went still. I thought I could leave before she knew. The words came uneven, fragmented. But the meaning was unmistakable. Don't trust anything she says. Silence. Then the recording cut off. Eleanor lowered the phone slowly. Her hands were shaking now. Not from confusion. Not from doubt. But from something far worse. Understanding. Another message. Her eyes snapped back to the screen. That wasn't meant for you yet. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Not meant for you yet. What did that mean? Who decided when she would hear it? The final message came seconds later. He set all of this up before he died. Eleanor stared at the words. Her thoughts spiraled. Scheduled messages. The burner phone. The The recordings. It hadn't been Sophie. Not entirely. Liam had done this. Before his death. Before that night. A slow, chilling realization crept in. He knew. He knew something was going to happen. Eleanor looked toward the door again. Toward Sophie. Her mind replayed the footage. The car leaving. The lie. The calm. The phone buzzed one last time. Eleanor didn't hesitate. She opened it. The accident wasn't supposed to happen like that. Her breath stopped. The room felt like it tilted again. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about messages. Or lies. Or grief. This was about a plan. One Liam had started. One that had gone wrong. And as Eleanor sat there in the dark, the truth settled over her like ice. Her son hadn't just died. He had been running. And whatever he was running from was still in this house. Eleanor didn't wait until morning. By the time the sky began to lighten, something inside her had already shifted. Something quiet, but irreversible. Fear had changed into something sharper. Purpose. Sophie was in the kitchen again. Of course she was. The same routine. The same calm. The same careful movements, as if nothing in the world had changed. But Eleanor saw her differently now. Every gesture. Every pause. Every word. It all meant something. "You're up early," Sophie said, glancing over with a soft smile. Eleanor stepped into the room. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. Sophie nodded, pouring coffee into 2 cups. "You should really try to rest. You're pushing yourself too hard." Eleanor walked closer. Stopped. Watched her. "Were you watching me last night?" she asked. The question landed quietly. But it cut through the room. Sophie didn't react immediately. She set the coffee pot down. Turned. Looked at Eleanor. "I'm not sure what you mean," she said. Eleanor held her gaze. "My phone," she continued. "Someone knew what I was doing." A flicker. There. Gone almost instantly. But Eleanor saw it. Sophie's expression softened again. "You've been under a lot of stress," she said gently. "It's natural to feel paranoid after something like this." Paranoid. Eleanor let out a small breath. "Is that what you think this is?" "I think you're grieving," Sophie replied. "And you're not?" Eleanor asked. Silence. For a moment, Sophie didn't answer. Then, "I handle things differently." Eleanor took another step forward. "Close now." Too close. "Why did you lie?" she asked. Sophie's eyes narrowed slightly. "I didn't." "You said you were home that night," Eleanor continued. "But you weren't." The room went still. Completely still. Sophie didn't move. Didn't blink. "Where did you go?" Eleanor pressed. A long pause. Then Sophie exhaled slowly. "I went out," she said. Just like that. Calm. Controlled. As if it didn't matter. Eleanor's chest tightened. "Why lie about it?" Sophie tilted her head slightly. "Because I knew how it would sound," she said. "Driving around that late. After what happened." "What happened?" Eleanor asked. Sophie's gaze locked onto hers. "You think I had something to do with it?" Not a question. A statement. Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't need to. Sophie stepped closer. Now they were only a few feet apart. "You've been going through my things," Sophie said quietly. Eleanor froze. Her pulse spiked. You found the phone," Sophie continued. Not accusing. Not angry. Just certain. Eleanor's breath caught. "How do you know that?" she whispered. Sophie smiled. But it wasn't warm. Not anymore. "Because," Sophie said softly, "you were meant to find it." Eleanor's stomach dropped. The room felt like it shifted again. Like the ground beneath her had tilted just slightly off balance. "Meant to," she repeated. Sophie's eyes held hers. Unblinking. Careful. Watching. "You're asking the wrong questions, Eleanor," Sophie said. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine. "Then what's the right one?" she asked. Sophie leaned in just slightly. Close enough that her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Why did Liam prepare all of this before he died?" Eleanor's breath stopped. Her mind raced. The messages. The recordings. The plan. And suddenly, This wasn't just about Sophie anymore. Eleanor stepped back slowly, her heart pounding, because for the first time, a new possibility opened in front of her, one she hadn't wanted to consider. "What are you not telling me?" she asked. Sophie straightened. Her expression returned to calm, controlled, untouchable. "Everything," she said. And just like that, the conversation ended. But the silence that followed felt far more dangerous than anything that had been said. Because now Eleanor understood one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't just a mystery she was uncovering. It was a game. And she had just stepped into it. And somewhere hidden beneath all of it, Liam had been playing long before she ever knew. Eleanor didn't sit down after that conversation. She couldn't. The air in the house felt different now. Thinner, tighter, like something invisible had wrapped itself around her chest and refused to let go. Sophie had admitted just enough. Not guilt. Not innocence. Just control. By late afternoon, Eleanor found herself standing in front of Liam's old study. She hadn't gone in since the funeral. The door had remained closed, untouched, like a boundary she wasn't ready to cross. Until now. Her hand rested on the handle for a moment. Then she turned it. The room smelled faintly of wood and dust. And something else. Something familiar. Liam. His desk was exactly as he had left it. Papers stacked neatly. A pen lying across an open notebook. His chair slightly pulled back, as if he had just stood up and meant to return. Eleanor stepped inside slowly. Her heart ached. But beneath it, something else stirred. Focus. If Liam had planned something, if he had known something, then the answers wouldn't be with Sophie. They would be here. She moved toward the desk, her fingers brushing lightly across the surface. Everything looked ordinary. Too ordinary. Eleanor opened the top drawer. Documents. Bills. Nothing unusual. Second drawer. More of the same. Then. She paused. At the back of the drawer, tucked beneath a stack of papers, was a small black notebook. Her breath caught. She pulled it out carefully. It felt heavier than it should. Eleanor opened it. The first few pages were blank. Then, writing. Liam's handwriting. Messy. Rushed. Unlike his usual neat, controlled style. Her eyes scanned the page. Fragments. Short sentences. Disconnected thoughts. Something's wrong. She knows. Can't stay. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the edges. Her pulse quickened. She turned the page. More writing. Faster now. More urgent. Money moved. New account. Leave before she finds out. Eleanor's breath became shallow. This wasn't just fear. This was preparation. Another page. Her heart skipped. If anything happens, messages scheduled. Phone hidden. Mom will understand. Eleanor froze. Her vision blurred slightly. The burner phone. The messages. He had planned it. All of it. Her hands trembled as she flipped to the next page. The writing became uneven. Jagged. She followed me tonight. Eleanor's chest tightened. Her mind flashed back. The footage. The car. Didn't expect her to. The sentence cut off. Abrupt. The pen mark dragging sharply across the page. Eleanor stared at it. Her heart pounding in her ears. That was it. That was the last thing he wrote. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Suffocating. Slowly, Eleanor lowered the notebook. Her thoughts began to align. Clearer now. Sharper. Liam hadn't just suspected something. He had been afraid. Afraid enough to plan an escape. Afraid enough to leave behind warnings. But he hadn't made it. A soft creak echoed from the hallway. Eleanor's head snapped toward the door. Her breath caught. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Approaching. Sophie. Eleanor quickly closed the notebook, her hands moving faster now. She slid it back into the drawer. Exactly where it had been. Every detail mattered. Every movement. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. A pause. Then, a soft knock. Eleanor. Sophie's voice came through, calm as ever. Too calm. Eleanor straightened, forcing her breathing to steady. Yes, she called back. The door opened slowly. Sophie stood there, watching her. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the desk, then back to Eleanor. I was wondering where you were, Sophie said gently. Eleanor held her gaze, said nothing. A quiet tension settled between them, thick, unspoken. Then Sophie smiled, that same soft, unreadable smile. You shouldn't stay in here too long, she said. It's not good for you. Eleanor's chest tightened, but this time, she didn't look away. Because now she knew something Sophie didn't expect her to know, something Liam had tried to leave behind. This wasn't just about what happened that night. It was about what Liam had discovered before it. And whatever that truth was, it was dangerous enough to get him killed. Eleanor didn't wait for the next message. Not this time. By the time night fell, she already knew what she needed to do. Liam hadn't just left clues. He had left instructions. At 2:58 a.m., Eleanor was already in the living room. Not in her bedroom. Not where Sophie would expect her to be. The lights were off. The house sat in darkness, wrapped in a silence that now felt almost deliberate. Eleanor stood near the security panel, her phone in one hand, her eyes fixed on the blank screen. Waiting. 3:00 a.m. The phone lit up instantly. One message. She opened it. Now. Eleanor's heart skipped. That was it. No explanation. No warning. Just one word. Then. Another message. Asterisco asterisco garage camera. Full recording. Eleanor didn't hesitate. Her fingers moved quickly across the panel, pulling up the system. The screen flickered to life. She selected the date. The time. The full recording. The footage began. Grainy. Silent. Time ticking forward in the corner. 11:28 p.m. The driveway was empty. Still. 11:32 p.m. Headlights appeared. Liam's car. It pulled in slowly. Stopped. Eleanor leaned closer. Her breath shallow. Her eyes fixed on the screen. The driver's door opened. Liam stepped out. Alive. Unharmed. For a moment, Eleanor forgot to breathe. This wasn't the accident. This was before it. Liam looked around. Nervous. Checking. Like he was expecting something. Or someone. Then. Another set of headlights. Eleanor's chest tightened. A second car pulled into the driveway. Fast. Too fast. The car stopped abruptly. The door opened. Sophie stepped out. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. No. On the screen, Sophie moved toward Liam quickly. Not calm. Not composed. Angry. Her movements sharp. Aggressive. They argued. No sound, but the body language said everything. Liam stepped back. Sophie stepped forward. Then. She grabbed him. Hard. Eleanor's heart slammed in her chest. Liam pulled away. Shouting something. Pointing toward the house. Toward the road. Then. He turned. Got back into the car. Sophie stood there. Watching. Still. For a moment nothing happened. Then. She moved. Fast. Back into her car. The engine started. Liam's car pulled out first. Sophie followed. The footage ended. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Eleanor stared at the screen, unable to move. Her mind raced. This wasn't an accident. This was a confrontation. A chase. The phone buzzed again. Eleanor flinched. She looked down. Another message. Now you see. Her hands trembled. Yes. She saw. Everything. Another message. But that's not the whole truth. Eleanor's breath caught. Not the whole truth. What else could there be? Her heart pounded harder now. Faster. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning. Slowly, Eleanor turned her head. Toward the hallway. Toward Sophie's room. Because now she knew one thing for certain. Sophie had lied. Sophie had followed him. Sophie had been there. And whatever happened after they left that driveway, Sophie knew exactly how it ended. The house creaked softly. The silence returned. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. And somewhere in that silence, the truth was still unfinished. Eleanor didn't move right away. The footage still burned behind her eyes. The argument, the chase, the certainty that nothing about that night had been an accident. Her phone remained in her hand, silent now, as if it had said everything it needed to. Behind her, a soft sound, a floorboard. Eleanor turned slowly. Sophie stood in the doorway. She wasn't smiling anymore. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them felt different now. Stripped. Exposed. You watched it, Sophie said quietly. Not a question. Eleanor's grip tightened around her phone. Yes. Sophie stepped into the room. Slow. Measured. I wondered when you would, she said. Eleanor's heart pounded, but her voice stayed steady. You followed him. Sophie didn't deny it. Yes, she said. The word landed heavier than anything else. Why? Eleanor asked. Sophie stopped a few feet away. Her expression shifted. Not to guilt, not to fear, but to something colder. Something tired. Because he was leaving, she said. Eleanor's breath caught. He had already transferred the money, Sophie continued. Packed what he needed. He thought he could disappear, without saying a word. Eleanor shook her head slowly. He wouldn't. He did, Sophie cut in. Sharp. Certain. Silence fell again. I followed him to stop him, Sophie said. That's all. Eleanor's chest tightened. And the accident? Sophie's gaze didn't waver. He lost control, she said. Too fast. Too clean. Eleanor took a step forward. No, she said quietly. That's not everything. Sophie's eyes flickered. Just slightly. Eleanor lifted her phone. There were messages, she said. Recordings. He knew something would happen. Sophie's expression hardened. He was paranoid, she said. He always thought he was smarter than everyone else. Another lie. Eleanor felt it now. Clearly. No, Eleanor said. Her voice stronger. He was afraid of you. Silence. Sophie didn't answer this time. Eleanor stepped closer. Close enough now to see the shift in her eyes. The tension. The truth pressing just beneath the surface. What really happened? Eleanor whispered. For a long moment. Nothing. Then, Sophie exhaled. Slow. Controlled. He tried to leave me, she said. He thought he could take everything and walk away. Her voice lowered. Colder now. I didn't let him. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Sophie's eyes met hers. We argued, she continued. He got back in the car. He was angry. Not thinking. A pause. I followed him. Another pause. Longer. Heavier. And when he lost control, she said softly, I didn't stop. Eleanor's breath stopped. The room went completely still. You could have helped him, Eleanor whispered. Sophie's gaze didn't move. I could have, she said. No emotion. No regret. Just truth. Eleanor staggered back slightly, her hand gripping the edge of the table. Her chest felt tight. Too tight. You left him there, she said. Sophie said nothing. That was the answer. The silence stretched. Thick. Unbearable. Then, Eleanor's phone buzzed. Both of them froze. Eleanor looked down slowly. Another message. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Mom, now you know. Her vision blurred. Sophie watched her. Carefully. What does it say? She asked. Eleanor lifted her eyes. Met Hirsch. It says you left him to die. Sophie didn't react. Not immediately. Then, a small smile. Faint. Almost invisible. He shouldn't have tried to leave, she said. The words settled into the room like something final. Eleanor felt something inside her break. Not loudly. Not suddenly, but completely. Another vibration. She looked down again. One last message. Call the police. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, took a breath. Then she looked up at Sophie. No fear now. No hesitation. Just clarity. I'm not alone anymore, Eleanor said quietly. Sophie's expression shifted. For the first time, uncertain. Eleanor stepped back, picked up the phone, and dialed. As the call connected, Sophie stood frozen in the middle of the room, watching everything slip out of her control. And somewhere, in the quiet space between the ringing tone and Eleanor's steady voice, it felt as if Liam was still there. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as the one who made sure the truth didn't die with him.